This is why I call on you to be an independent, to be a free agent, and stop following the game.
She's on her way to deciding.
We'll see.
About deciding.
We couldn't help her any more than we have.
I know.
You know what I mean? She's got just a free ride so far from the media. We're the biggest ones promoting her campaign, so it better happen. What happened to states' rights? District Attorney Bragg definitely has a strong case against the GOP and really Congress. Why? Interfering in a state investigation. That is his accusation, and he is right.
House Republicans are demanding that a state prosecutor leading an active investigation, Alvin Bragg, appear before them to explain himself. Talk about the weaponization of the federal government.
Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy instructed all House congressional committees to do everything they can to put a stop to the criminal investigation being conducted by New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg into their political deity, Donald Trump.
I'm directing relevant committees.
Instructed all House congressional committees.
I'm directing relevant committees to immediately investigate if federal funds are being used to subvert our democracy by interfering in elections with politically motivated prosecutions.
Well, why is the federal government getting involved in this at the House of Representatives? Because Trump is a declared presidential candidate. So therefore, everything that happens in Manhattan is is under the purview of the federal government.
The MAGA Republicans are simply engaged in repeated attempts of obstruction of justice. This is banana republic stuff.
Calling Bragg before Congress is an abuse of process for political purposes. Period. Oh, no, they have oversight. No, they don't. Why? Why would they have oversight?
Because Trump is a declared presidential candidate.
This is a deliberate effort, a partisan effort, to try and interfere and obstruct an ongoing investigation so that they can acquire information which they will certainly just turn over to Donald Trump and give him a leg up as he tries to mount a defense against what we expect will be a pending indictment.
And he tweeted, DA Bragg has, quote, different rules for political opponents. Then he added this really gratuitous little dog whistle bit. Republicans stopped the radical DC crime law, and we will investigate any use of federal funds that are used to facilitate the perversion of justice by Soros-backed DAs across the country. Oh, that's a little anti-Semitic because, when they say Soros, they mean Jewish.
Jim Jordan, who is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, going on conservative TV to say he's asking the Manhattan District Attorney to testify behind closed doors to his committee. That after Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, vowed Republicans would go on offense.
We sent this letter to Mr. Bragg saying, we want to talk to you. We want to know what's going on here. We want to see the communications that have taken place between the Federal Justice Department and your district attorney's office there in Manhattan. Because understand, Harris, first they went after President Trump on Russia. Then it was a phone call with Zelensky. Then they wanted his tax return. Then they go after his business records. Then they go after his children. And now it's some misdemeanor alleged bookkeeping error.
Banana republic stuff.
That they're going to, and this is from the prosecutor who initially didn't want to do this. In fact, he had people resign because he wasn't going to do this because no one else will bring this case. I mean, the DOJ didn't bring the case. The Federal District of New York didn't bring the case. The previous prosecutor in the district there in Manhattan didn't bring the case. Mr. Bragg himself didn't want to bring the case. But then he got pressured, I think, from the left. And I would say this, the one thing that has changed, the one thing that I think has changed his mind is President Trump announced he was going to run for president again.
Really remarkable how House Republicans are really using the levers of government that they have to, defend Trump as as the president may or may not face this indictment this week. And I think that perhaps Speaker McCarthy feels he has no other choice. We saw how reliant he is on that Trump flank to keep his speakership, but it really is a new level what is going on here.
Was the Manhattan DA's office in communication with the Department of Justice about their investigation of President Trump? Was the Manhattan DA's office using federal funds to investigate President Trump? Alvin Bragg owes our community answers. Actually, he doesn't owe answers. And Jim Jordan, who claims that he's all about small government, now it's let's use the House of Representative resources to attack a local prosecutor's local prosecution.
So much for small government, so much for getting the federal government out of our lives. They say one thing, they do another. That is the game.
Alvin Bragg's reply letter to Jim Jordan is the single most humiliating letter ever received by a chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, every one of whom has known much more about the law than Jim Jordan.
We saw in Bragg's own letter, he seems to be backing off the certainty of charges against Trump. Very unusual move for a district attorney to back off in advance like this, especially when a grand jury is impaneled.
It's the single most humiliating letter ever received by a chairman of the House Judiciary Committee.
And I'm hearing that the Manhattan DA's house is divided on this.
Alvin Bragg's 5-page letter to Jim Jordan and the other chairman points out that what they're asking for would be interference with law enforcement and that their request is, quote, an unlawful incursion into New York's sovereignty, something that has been true and obvious for every day of the existence of the United States of America, and you don't have to go to law school to know that.
What is your response to Bragg's response to you? You're breaching his sovereignty.
Well, they're saying we're interfering. How about they're interfering with a federal election? Remember, Maria, the Justice Department wasn't going to bring this case. The previous district attorney, Cy Vance, wasn't going to bring this case, didn't bring this case. And even Alvin Bragg himself, when he first gets elected, said, there's no way I'd bring this case. I can't put Michael Cohen on the witness stand. I can't have this guy who lied to Congress 6 times, who went to prison for lying. I can't bring this case. And then all of a sudden he changes his mind. And what was the intervening event? President Trump announces he's running for president.
Alvin Bragg told Jim Jordan, quote, it is clear that Congress cannot have any legitimate legislative task relating to the oversight of local prosecutors enforcing state law.
And listen, congressional oversight is about looking at the federal government. It's about looking at what resources are being used, what taxpayer resources are being used at the federal level, and ensuring that there's no waste, fraud, abuse, mismanagement going on.
I'd like him, though, to just turn the tide here and come forward and explain pretty straightforward questions with a direct federal nexus, in particular when the federal government is providing public safety grants to DAs across the country, including the Manhattan DA, Mr. Bragg's office. Are these funds being used for the purposes that they were intended for public safety, or for a partisan purpose? It's all the more important when we see progressive district attorneys across the country refusing to prosecute serious violent crime.
Remember how the Republicans are all about states' rights until their political leader, their king, their savior, is about to be criminally indicted for, let's call it what it is, crimes he committed.
And now, District Attorney Bragg is following the precedent of the segregationist South and targeting Donald Trump for facts that aren't even misdemeanors.
Let's call it what it is, crimes he committed in New York, in violation of New York state law.
Here, he made a deal not to have himself and his family embarrassed, paid $130,000. Did they really expect him to enter it in his books as hush money paid to avoid revealing adulterous affair? Nobody in history has ever done that in a non-disclosure agreement. Of course he would say illegal. It's not even a misdemeanor. And then to say, but the reason he did it was really to avoid disclosure that he had committed a federal felony, that is the violation of campaign financing. It's the most stretched, the most absurd. I have to tell you, in 60 years of practicing criminal law, I have never seen a worse abuse of prosecutorial discretion. And the left, including today's New York Times, including CNN, they're all cheering this on as if it won't establish a terrible precedent, which today is used against Trump, tomorrow used against the Democrat, and the day after tomorrow used against your Uncle Charlie or your nephew. This is one of the most serious violations of the rule of law I've experienced in 60 years. And this comes from a Democrat.
Crimes for which his co-conspirator Michael Cohen pleaded guilty, was convicted, and imprisoned, served time. Crimes that Donald Trump committed when he was a private citizen in New York, albeit one running for president. And the fact that he's going to be indicted and prosecuted presently while he's a private citizen, all of that seems to be lost on Kevin McCarthy, who has directed all congressional committees to do what they can to put a stop to the investigation and prosecution of Donald Trump.
It's all about lying. It's about the 4 lies that have resulted in 4 investigations, including doctoring a tape, which is, of course, what the January 6th committee did when it left out the words peacefully and patriotically. It's about Michael Cohen, who may be the world's biggest liar. He gets all the Pinocchios. And the district attorney is making a very hard decision now. Does he put his bar at risk, his bar certificate at risk, by putting on the stand a man he knows is going to lie in violation of the rules of ethics? So it's all about lying. My book, Get Trump, documents lie after lie. The left, the so-called liberals, they're not liberals, they're radicals, will do anything, stretch the Constitution, destroy the Constitution to prevent Trump from running for president.
This is the bread and butter of the Manhattan DA's office. Like, these are not necessarily sexy cases. This is not about election fraud per se, but it is about all of the various ways in which this person may have cut corners over and over and over again in a way that ordinary individuals in New York could not. And there has to be some accountability for that. And if this is it, it may not be sexy, but it sticks.
Anti-federal government, pro-states' rights Republican Jim Jordan says a local elected official charged with enforcing New York law owes a federal congressional committee answers about his office's work. Cuts against just about every principle Jim Jordan and these Republicans purport to believe in. Yeah, they believe in nothing and they fall for everything because they fall for the Donald Trump cult.
They keep getting away with it, okay? That's why it keeps happening. You and I had this same discussion 4 years ago over the Russia collusion lie, when we both figured out that Russia collusion with Trump was a lie and made up by one political campaign to take down her opponent. And what happens? It goes viral across the world. The media drove it. And here we are again. Same thing. They did it with impeachment for Trump. They did it with the Biden laptop. They even did it with the origins of COVID-19. And the media ran with it.
That is the game.